Lesson 7. Coffee House Life. The coffee houses were a kind of important political institution in the 17th and 18th centuries. In those days, nothing resembling the modern newspaper existed. In a society where modern machinery of agitation had not yet come into fashion, the coffee houses were the chief organs that voiced the public opinion. The first coffee house was set up by a Turkish merchant who learnt the habit of drinking coffee from the Mohammedans. Soon it became a favorite beverage for the Londoners. In the beginning, when the East India Company imported tea and coffee, they remained an expensive and favorite drink of the upper class. When the coffee house was set up, coffee ceased to be a luxury drink anymore. From the reign of Charles II to the early Georges, the London coffee house was the center of social life. Coffee houses served as a convenient meeting place for people of all classes and professions. Their evenings could be spent socially at a very small charge. Owing to these reasons, visiting coffee house became a fashion of the day. Every man of the upper and middle class had his favorite house which he visited every day to meet his friend, customers, business partners, to learn news and discuss it. Every rank and profession and every shade of religious and political opinion had its own headquarters. The Tories went to the cocoa trade and Orisindus. The Whigs gathered at the coffee house St. James. Writers were to be found at Old Slothers unless they were listening to Dr. Johnson at the Bedford or the Turk's Head. Will Coffee House was sacred to polite poets, critics, and patrons. Dryden used to frequent that house. The clergy haunted Trubies and scholars the Grecian. There were coffee houses favored by stockbrokers, army officers, and booksellers. At Lloyd's on Lombard Street, merchants and sea captains gathered to hear shipping news and to arrange insurance on cargo and vessels. There were coffee houses where first medical men might be consulted. Dr. John Radcliffe, a very famous doctor in the 17th century, was found in the evenings at Garraway's, surrounded by surgeons and apothecaries. At the better houses, newspapers, pens, ink, and writing paper were provided, and in some cases, music and dice. Every coffee house had an orator of its own. People thronged coffee houses to listen to and admire the political, literary discourses of these orators. The universal liberty of speech of the English nation was well seen in the coffee houses. The orators expressed their opinions against the government and the church or against their enemies without any sense of fear to the people who were listening to them. This freedom of expression practiced in the coffee houses was the quintessence of coffee house life. Coffee houses thus grew a powerful body. The government was uneasy at the growing power of the coffee houses. It wanted to put a check on its growth. An attempt was made to close the coffee house, but there was a universal outcry, and hence the law was not put into effect. Coffee houses were a unique property of London. No other city had this glamorous feature in it. It is not an exaggeration to say that the coffee houses was the Londoner's home. No one asked whether a man lived in Fleet Street or Chancery Land, but whether he frequented the Grecian or the Rainbow. The coffee houses were like our modern clubs in one respect. In fact, they were cheaper, and no one who paid a penny was denied admission at the bar. In days when men stood much on their rank, it had a leveling influence. There were no newspapers during the period, but news could be most easily obtained at the coffee house. In this sense, coffee houses were the newspapers of that age. Political, military, business news, and news of general interest could be had in the coffee houses. In many coffee houses, smoking was not prohibited. Strangers sometimes wondered that so many people should leave their own firesides to sit in the midst suffering from stench. The spoken words did many things that print doesn't. The print does today. And hence, coffee houses were very popular in the 17th and 18th centuries.